We're here with Sarah Copeland-Hanzas, who's the House Majority Leader. First, let's start with your role this year. You're going to have a slightly different role, a little bit more expanded because of what's going on with the Speaker, Shap Smith, and his wife and her health. Talk about that.
Well, you know, we understand that there will need to be days when Shap is not here at his typical 7:45 in the morning, or needing to leave early to get home and help on the home front. So the leadership team is prepared to make sure that we step in and pick up the slack. Typically, that will mean that I'll be presiding on the floor if Shap is needing to go with his wife for an appointment or treatments. So.
Is this in any way, are you preparing for next year in any way?
We're all thinking about next year. We're all kind of acknowledging that it's going to be a different makeup of the House when Shap moves on. And so there's lots of conversations going on now about how we all prepare for the new leadership opportunities that will arise in the next biennium.
Is he a mentor to you? I mean, is he somebody who's been kind of, in a sense, grooming you for a higher leadership position?
Oh, I don't know that he intentionally grooms, but I certainly do appreciate being able to work alongside him and kind of pick his brain about how he arrives at decisions and how he helps different factions negotiate the details of policy. He's really masterful at that, and he has a different style than I do. He's pretty brusque and pretty direct, and I tend to be more, let's all get together and talk things through and communicate, and so there is certainly a lot that I and the rest of the leadership team hopes to learn from the way Shap operates, so that we take the best of what he has and try to adapt it to whoever will be here next year.
Top priorities this year would be what?
Well, the number one priority is always balancing the budget. That's, fundamentally that's the one thing that we have to do. And with the Medicaid challenges in the budget, that's going to be a particular focus for us. In that context, what we are doing is through the leadership of Mitzi Johnson, the Chair of Appropriations, and also with Shap's blessing and direction, we're asking policy committees to do a much deeper look at the programs and departments within their agencies and jurisdictions, so that we can really look at everything that state government does and ask, is it working? Who's it benefiting? And ultimately, the Appropriations Committee asks, how much does it cost? And when we look at those programs and departments across state government and identify the ones that are most critical to our mission and are performing the most efficiently, then we can look at how we prioritize health care for Vermonters, which is what Medicaid predominantly is, versus the other areas of spending. And it's going to be a change process for policy committees to really get in deep into the programs and departments and ask, what do you do and who are you serving and how well are you doing it? But I think it's going to be a beneficial process for us to be able to go back to our voters and say to Vermonters, we are looking at how your money is being spent, and we are making sure that it's being spent well.
When I talked to the Speaker last week, he suggested that having Medicaid gaps every year is not the worst thing, because in a lot more people are getting health care. On the other hand, why can't the legislature sort of successfully predict what it's going to be and successfully budget?
So there's been a couple of changes over the last couple of years that have contributed to some of the poor prediction that we've done, the poor anticipation. One of them is in the change in eligibility for Medicaid because of the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
So the Affordable Care Act allows, for instance, a small business owner, a sole proprietor, or somebody who has their own set of equipment to depreciate the value of that equipment and depreciate that against their income, which brings, some people into Medicaid eligibility that we hadn't anticipated when we had looked at the projections. We don't know what everybody's income is, and we certainly don't know what their, the depreciation of their assets could look like. So we didn't really anticipate how many of them would be eligible for Medicaid versus how many would be eligible for a subsidized plan on the Vermont Health Connect exchange. And the long and the short of it is, if you have been determined to be eligible for Medicaid because of your income, then that means that that's what you can afford.
Mm-hmm.
We have a system now where up to 300% people are paying based on their income level.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have the exchange subsidies to help folks who are struggling at the lower end of the income.
So is this good news or bad news? How do you interpret it?
It's both. It's both good news and bad news. It gives us a terrible headache to think about how we balance the budget in light of ever expanding healthcare costs. But it's good news because we have the second lowest uninsured rate in the entire country, and we are the second healthiest population in the entire country. And those two things are not disconnected. We understand that when people have access to health care, they are able to stay healthier. And so, yes, it's a challenge. Yes, it's, it's stressful. And for some people, it makes them ask, why do I want to come back as a
Mm-hmm.
legislator and only to have to do this year after year? But I think it's a really, it is a really big success story, and so it gives us heartburn.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to have to deal with that. It's no surprise that healthcare is what's driving costs. We've known this for a long time, which is why we've been tackling healthcare reform for the dozen years that I've been here.
Right.
And we have more work that we need to do in order to bend healthcare growth so that it is more in alignment with our regular revenue growth.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got folks working on that, and we're going to continue to work on that. And in the meantime, we're going to have to figure out how to backfill.
Mm-hmm. Share with me your thoughts and observations. What was going on in the other chamber this week with Senator McAllister?
Oh, that was very difficult for folks. Anytime you have a colleague who has been accused of and involved with something as distasteful as the facts around the McAllister case, it's a really uncomfortable thing. And I gather that a lot of folks in the Senate hoped that he would do the honorable thing and step down, as opposed to insisting that he should be here and that he had done nothing wrong. I think that the affidavits that were filed that led to the charges are compelling enough and horrible enough that folks just felt really uncomfortable with the idea that he could stand here and say he had done nothing wrong. And for me, as a woman who didn't necessarily have to come into a lot of direct contact with him, I didn't feel that there was a strong and compelling reason for me to weigh in on it. But I have to say that I'm relieved that they did what they did in suspending him, because he comes here in a position of power, and he comes here as an accused sexual predator. And there are women in this building who have been preyed upon and have been victims of sexual violence. And if he is in a position of power over somebody who is trying to work here and to operate here, it creates a really hostile environment. And I believe that he should be able to be innocent until proven guilty. But the facts of the affidavit create this really intense negative environment for folks who've already suffered from sexual violence. And we have to be open we have to be an open building and welcoming to all Vermonters, and his presence here was a distraction from that.
I know I've got to let you go. Can we just maybe share with me some other issues that are really going to be a big focus here next 3, 4, not 3, maybe 4 or 5 months?
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, it's going to be that long, isn't it?
One day at a time.
One day at a time, yes. It's only the first week. We're all still feeling fresh and strong legs. You know, we certainly on the House side are hoping and cheering for passage of earned sick leave. That was a bill that we worked very hard to develop last year with our business partners to do a small but universal sick leave benefit for Vermonters. And so we'll be fingers crossed and giving support to our colleagues in the Senate as they consider the bill. And so we're certainly hoping on that front. We have some really difficult questions to answer with respect to the thresholds in Act 46.
Mm-hmm.
We're hearing from some districts around the state that say, you know, we're having a lot of trouble keeping under the threshold. And
the governor called yesterday to just basically toss that out. Can you do that quickly and make that happen?
I don't think tossing it out is going to...
Or moratorium, I guess you said.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that we have a majority of House members who would do a delay.
Really?
I'm not, because I continue to hear from people who say, my business manager said to me, it's okay. They're doing hard work, at the school board level. They're making the hard decisions. They're finding efficiencies that they didn't find before. Stay the course right now. Now, and of course, there are other places where every district is different. There are other places where it's out of their control.
Mm-hmm.
They lost a few students, or the roof leaked, or healthcare costs went through the roof, and so there are other places that are experiencing significant anxiety about how to stay under the thresholds.
I would have thought that you would have had an easy majority to get that taken care of. It seemed as though it was pretty universal. People didn't like that provision.
Yeah, well, it's really variable, across the state. And so I think that, it'll be a few more days of negotiating and taking testimony and talking with folks to try to figure out what direction to go. And can't really predict it at this moment.
Pot legalization, any interest in pursuing that?
Well, I really appreciated what the governor said about the five things that he would want to see in a bill if a bill was passed, because we've never thought that we were going to take the first crack at it. We always knew that the Senate would start, so it's not like we have
right.
A formulated bill on the House side. But as we've been talking with House members and just making sure that we have our homework done so that we're not being surprised, those are the kinds of things that people are concerned about. What do you do about roadside sobriety? How do you do a taxing structure that keeps the price low enough that you're not encouraging a continuation of a black market, but also, bringing in the revenue you need to create the regulatory structure and to do that public health outreach that really, reminds folks everywhere that, young developing brains that are exposed to marijuana and other substances really show long-term effects. And so, those kinds of things that the governor laid out, I think, are important for us to see in a bill that comes over from the Senate side. And I'm not sure if we're going to get it all put together this year like that. I have a lot of people in my caucus who are saying, we don't need to rush. We need to get it right. We need to do it the Vermont way, learn from the mistakes in the other states, and do it the right way, not just do it now because the governor says he wants it now. And so we'll see how that plays out. We've got another 4.5, 5 months to work on it.
Last question. Safe to tell Vermonters you're not going to be raising taxes this year?
I'm not sure. I think that there's, we certainly raise taxes in terms of the revenue that comes through the fee bill every year, and so the way that works is that 1/3 of the fees across state government get considered each year, and we make sure that the fees are tagged to the revenue that's needed to keep that department or that agency going, or to provide that service to Vermonters. So yeah, there will probably be revenue in the fee bill.
But you know what I mean, income taxes, sales taxes, rooms and meals taxes, any of those?
Yeah, I don't think, I'm from the Connecticut River Valley, we don't like raising the sales tax. I think, I can't predict what's gonna happen right now this year, but I can tell you that we need to, as a state, take some serious consideration into how we fund our public health, our healthcare programs. We need to make sure that we can, look in the mirror honestly and say, we are offering Medicaid to Vermonters, and this is how we're going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the shortfalls that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation are coming back to us perpetually because we haven't taken a good, strong look at that and said to ourselves, this is how we would pay for a robust healthcare program. Providers are feeling the pinch,
right.
Particularly if you're an independent pediatric practice, because a high percentage of your patients are Medicaid because they're on Dr. Dinosaur. And if Medicaid reimbursements continue to be kept low, the way they have been, those independent pediatric practices are feeling the major pinch. And so we need to make sure that we can say honestly to Vermonters, we're doing the responsible thing. This is how we should pay for health care.
Thank you very much for your time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good luck today.
Thank you.